Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into Bitcoin today. You actually sent in something about Bitcoin, and we're excited to unpack this topic with you.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how Bitcoin continues to kind of captivate and challenge us, even all these years later.
It really is. The idea of a currency operating outside traditional banking systems is mind-boggling. So let's start at the very beginning. The year is 2009.
Okay.
The world is dealing with that financial crisis, and suddenly this mysterious figure, Satoshi Nakamoto, introduces Bitcoin to the world and then vanishes.
Wow.
Talk about a dramatic entrance.
Yeah, it's almost mythical, right? This whole shrouded origin story definitely adds to the intrigue surrounding Bitcoin. But I think beyond the mystery, what Satoshi created presented a revolutionary idea, a digital currency that's free from the control of any government or financial institution.
And that's where the concept of the blockchain comes in, right?
Exactly.
Can you explain how this sort of digital DNA of Bitcoin works and why it's so important?
The blockchain is basically a public ledger that keeps track of every single Bitcoin transaction. Think of it as a digital receipt book that everyone can access and verify.
Okay.
This record is spread across a network of computers, which makes it incredibly secure and nearly impossible to tamper with.
So instead of a bank, we're essentially trusting this complex mathematical system and a network of computers.
It is a shift in trust, putting it in the hands of technology and a distributed network, and that's actually one of the 5 key features that make Bitcoin so unique and disruptive.
The 5 key features. Okay, tell me more about what makes Bitcoin so special.
Well, we've talked about decentralization, which empowers individuals by removing intermediaries.
Right.
But let's move on to security. Remember that digital receipt book analogy? Well, it's guarded by powerful cryptography, making Bitcoin incredibly difficult to counterfeit or hack. Every transaction has to be verified by multiple computers on the network, which prevents fraudulent activity.
So it's like this digital fortress protecting your money. But how does Bitcoin deal with inflation? Because that's a major concern with traditional currencies, right?
Absolutely. That's where scarcity comes into play. Unlike government-issued currencies, which can be printed endlessly, leading to inflation, Bitcoin has a fixed supply. It's capped at 21 million coins.
Oh, interesting.
This inherent scarcity is why some people view Bitcoin as a store of value, similar to gold. What are your thoughts on this concept of digital scarcity?
It's definitely an interesting idea, right? If the value of our traditional currencies can be eroded by inflation, having a fixed supply could make Bitcoin a more stable asset over time. But I can see why people might be hesitant. It's a very different way of thinking about money. What else? What are some of the other features?
Let's talk about anonymity. While not completely anonymous, Bitcoin offers a level of privacy through something called pseudonymity.
Pseudonymity.
Yes, users transact using these alphanumeric addresses rather than their real names. So you can track the movement of Bitcoin on the blockchain, but you don't necessarily know who's behind those transactions.
So it's kind of like a layer of privacy, but not complete anonymity.
Right, an important distinction.
Got it. What about accessibility? How does Bitcoin compare to using traditional financial systems?
Bitcoin's global accessibility is a major advantage because it goes beyond borders, allowing anyone with an internet connection to participate in the network. This is huge, especially for people in countries with limited access to traditional banking systems. They can use Bitcoin to send and receive money even without a bank account.
That's pretty incredible. So we've got this decentralized, secure, scarce, pseudonymous, and globally accessible currency. Now that we understand what makes Bitcoin unique, let's think about the real-world advantages. Why should anyone listening care about Bitcoin? What's in it for them?
That's a great question. I think it's important to move beyond the technical stuff and see how Bitcoin can actually benefit people. Imagine you need to send money overseas.
Okay.
Traditionally, this involves banks, international transfer fees, and a lot of waiting. But with Bitcoin, you can potentially bypass all of that, sending money directly to the recipient with lower fees and faster transaction times.
That sounds like a game changer, especially for people who frequently send money internationally. Are there any other practical advantages?
Absolutely. Let's consider the current concerns about inflation eating away at the value of savings.
Yeah.
Some people see Bitcoin, with its limited supply, as a potential hedge against inflation, a way to safeguard their wealth amidst all the economic uncertainty.
So it's like a digital life raft in a sea of economic turmoil.
That's one way to look at it. And for communities with limited access to banks, Bitcoin can be a lifeline. They can use it for everyday transactions, essentially becoming their own bank.
That's powerful. Lower transaction costs, potential protection against inflation, and empowering financial inclusion. It's starting to sound pretty revolutionary.
It's definitely disruptive and attracting a lot of attention for those reasons.
Well,
But it's important to approach any new technology with a balanced perspective.
of course.
Alongside these advantages, there are also challenges to consider.
Okay, so let's flip the coin and explore the other side of the Bitcoin story. What are some of the hurdles and concerns surrounding this seemingly utopian system?
One major challenge is volatility. We talked about Bitcoin's price fluctuations earlier. These swings can be pretty dramatic, and while they present opportunities for profit, they also carry significant risk. Imagine waking up one morning to find that your Bitcoin investment has lost a big chunk of its value.
Oof, that's gotta hurt.
It can be a tough pill to swallow.
For sure. How can people mitigate that risk? Is there any way to navigate this volatility without, losing everything?
That's a question a lot of investors are grappling with, and we can delve into some strategies later on.
Okay.
But first, let's talk about another challenge: scalability. The Bitcoin network, while secure, can only process a limited number of transactions per second. As Bitcoin gains popularity, the network can get congested, like rush hour traffic.
Oh, I see.
This can lead to slower transaction times and higher fees, which can be pretty frustrating for users.
So it's like everyone's trying to squeeze through a single toll booth at the same time.
Exactly. It's a bottleneck that developers are working hard to address. But it's a significant hurdle that needs to be overcome for Bitcoin to be widely adopted. Another hurdle is the regulatory landscape. Because Bitcoin operates outside traditional financial systems, governments are still figuring out how to regulate it.
Mm.
Some countries have embraced it, while others have imposed bans or restrictions. This creates a lot of uncertainty for investors and businesses.
So it's a bit of a Wild West out there in terms of regulations.
Indeed. And we can't overlook the environmental impact.
Right.
The process of mining Bitcoin, which is how new coins are created and transactions are verified, requires a massive amount of energy. This has raised concerns about its carbon footprint and sustainability.
So we've got volatility, scalability issues, regulatory hurdles, and environmental concerns. Those are some pretty significant challenges for Bitcoin to overcome. Knowing all this, where do you see Bitcoin heading in the future?
That's the billion-dollar question, and no one has a crystal ball. But even with these challenges, Bitcoin's potential to disrupt things is undeniable. It's forcing us to rethink money and finance and value itself.
So it's not just about buying and selling Bitcoin.
No, not at all.
There's a bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's challenging how we think about things. It's about empowering people. It's pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That's exciting. Even if Bitcoin doesn't become like the currency of the future,
Yeah.
it's clear that it's paved the way for a new way of thinking about money and finance,
Yeah, exactly. And, Bitcoin is still evolving.
right?
Developers are working on solutions to those challenges we talked about.
Yeah.
Like, for example, they're developing this thing called the Lightning Network.
Right.
And it's to tackle those scalability issues. It's designed to make transactions faster and cheaper by creating like a layer 2 on top of the main Bitcoin blockchain.
So it's like we're adding those express lanes to the highway to speed things up.
Exactly. That's a great way to think
Yeah.
about it.
Cool. So what other innovations are we looking at for the future of Bitcoin?
Well, one interesting trend is that we're seeing more interest from bigger institutions, like
Yeah.
hedge funds, asset managers, even pension funds.
Wow.
They're starting to explore Bitcoin as an investment.
So the big players are starting to take it seriously.
They are, and I think that could mean a shift towards more mainstream acceptance. Increased investment could lead to more stability and drive further adoption. It's like Bitcoin's entering the real world of finance after being seen as this fringe asset for so long.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But, Bitcoin's success has also kind of sparked all these other cryptocurrencies.
Right, all the altcoins.
Yeah, it's like Bitcoin opened the door and now there's this whole crowd vying for attention.
Exactly.
So what are some of the key players in this altcoin space? And how do they differ from Bitcoin?
Well, there's Ethereum, which is more than just a currency. It's a platform for building decentralized applications, which can be anything from digital art to complex financial instruments.
Oh, wow.
And then there's Litecoin,
Yeah.
which aims to be faster and more lightweight than Bitcoin, focusing on everyday transactions.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget about stablecoins,
Right.
which try to minimize that volatility by pegging their value to like the US dollar.
So there's this whole ecosystem of digital currencies out there, each with its own unique purpose and technology.
Yeah, it really is fascinating.
It's a lot to take in. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the mysterious origins of Bitcoin to the potential of the blockchain to like reshape the world. It's been a really insightful conversation.
It has.
But for our listener, what's the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think the key takeaway is that Bitcoin and crypto represent a paradigm shift. It's pushing us to rethink finance, empower individuals, and change how we think about value.
But it's not without risks, right?
Of course not.
We've talked about the volatility, the regulatory uncertainty, the technological challenges.
Right. It's important to approach this space with, a healthy dose of skepticism. Do your research, understand the risks. This deep dive was all about giving you the knowledge you need to navigate this world.
It's complex,
It is,
and it's always evolving.
for sure. So I guess the question now is, what are you curious about? What else do you want to know about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies?
That's the beauty of it, right? We're all still figuring it out.
Exactly. The answers are still being written.
Yeah, it feels like we're watching history in the making. It's like the early days of the internet all over again.
It is a very similar feeling. And like the internet, there are going to be challenges, right? We're going to see those hype cycles and maybe some bumps in the road along the way. But that underlying technology, the blockchain, that's likely here to stay.
You've mentioned the blockchain a few times. What makes it so special?
Right.
What are we going to be using it for beyond cryptocurrency?
Well, the blockchain's potential goes way beyond just digital currencies. It's really about creating more transparency and security and efficiency. And we're already seeing it being used in things like supply chain management,
Okay.
where it can track products from where they begin to the consumer.
Oh, so no more counterfeit goods.
Exactly. And that's just one example.
Yeah.
It could also be used in voting systems
Interesting.
to make elections more secure and transparent.
Makes sense.
And even in healthcare.
Wow.
It has the potential to completely change how we keep medical records, making sure data is private but can also easily be shared between different healthcare providers.
Secure, transparent, and efficient. That's amazing.
It is, and we're really just scratching the surface here. There's so much potential for the blockchain to really change things across a lot of different areas.
This deep dive has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground, from the mysterious origins of Bitcoin to the potential of the blockchain. It's a lot to take in, but I feel like I have a much better understanding of all of this now.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's what we aim to do, right?
Right.
We want to spark your curiosity, give you the knowledge you need so that you can form your own opinions.
We've explored both the benefits and the drawbacks of Bitcoin, but as we wrap up, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this?
I'd say the most important thing is to never stop learning.
Yeah.
Stay curious. Keep asking questions. The world of crypto is constantly changing, so the more you understand, the better you'll be able to navigate it.
And as always, we have to say it, be careful with your investments.
Always.
Don't invest more than you can afford to lose.
Very good advice. Knowledge is power, especially when things are changing so fast.
So keep learning and keep exploring. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big crypto breakthrough.
We'll be here to cheer you on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Bitcoin. We'll have all those resources we talked about in the show notes.
Be sure to check them out.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.